you say that we should be viewing behaviors as adaptations that help a child cope and survive in their world instead of something that needs to be eliminated. So we should be looking at these behaviors not just as behaviors, but as adaptations to help them survive, that they have developed to help them survive, coping mechanisms, instead of something that we just want to eliminate altogether. Can you elaborate a little bit on that so that we can kind of get a better understanding of that concept?
Absolutely. So when we consider that behaviors are adaptive, in other words, they serve a purpose, an important purpose for children. And that purpose is not, as many of us are taught and trained and believe, to either get out of doing something, or to get negative attention, or to avoid something they don't want to do. Behaviors are actually not coming from those very simplistic causes as we thought, but rather what we know now is that human beings have something called a brain-body pathway called the autonomic nervous system. And you can just think of it as the information highway that is going between our brain and our body all the time. And that information highway is always informing us subconsciously. So it's always informing us about what to do, essentially how to move our bodies, what to say, how to react, how we feel. And when human beings detect that something's wrong, and there's the word for this is neuroception. It's the subconscious detection of threat and safety in our world or in our environment. Then we are we are essentially evolved to do certain behaviors. And some of these behaviors are called fight or flight behaviors. These are the ones that are targeted most often in schools, but they're actually different ranges of behaviors. But these fight or flight behaviors, when children are moving, they may be saying things that are troubling, or they may be hitting, they may be spitting, they may be self-injuring, they may be doing things that look antisocial, but they're not. They're survival. They are stress behaviors that are coming out to help the individual not shut down. So these, what I call in the book, and after you read it, you'll understand that it's the red pathway. When the red pathway is turned on because an individual isn't feeling safe in their body-mind connection, and for our individuals on the autism spectrum and with other brain wiring differences and with other experiences, sometimes a trigger is completely invisible. It could be a sound, it could be a sensation, it could be a grumbly tummy or gas, but that shifts the mind subconsciously into a move pattern. And the move pattern is what we must respect as, what is this telling us about what the child is experiencing right now and what the student needs, rather than...
Okay. So are you saying, so on a subconscious level, they're trying to protect themselves, that that behavior is basically them going into a more protective mode because they're sensing a danger, or subconsciously their bodies are sensing a danger?
Absolutely. And the body is choosing it for them. The autonomic nervous system, which is subconscious, you're right, Megan, is choosing it for them. It's not a... So you may read the story about one of the students in the book who was rocking very heavily, and then they asked him not to rock in his chair at school, and then they asked him not to rock, and then he started moving sideways, and then they asked him not to move sideways, and then he started kind of grabbing at his aid. And
Mateo.
What's that? Yeah.
Are you talking about Mateo?
Mateo, yes, my Mateo, and which isn't his real name, of course. Everything's highly, um, highly. Oh, there he is. Yes, yes. Everything is not the same name, of course, to protect everyone's identities. But Mateo, and then he got more. He was moving more and more, and he ended up being put in a what it was called a calm down room, which was really a large closet. And he went from this movement of adaptation, adaptive behaviors. Help me, people. I can't sit still and listen to the teacher right now. So my body is moving for me. When he was punished for that, he eventually went blue. He just started banging his head against the side of the closet. And so we want to begin to view behaviors as having an incredibly important meaning and value them for what they tell us about what the child needs from either the environment or the adult around the child, or likely both.
That story, it really hit me to my core, because I see it. It's like a natural thing for classrooms everywhere. There's a behavior that's happening, and they tell them not to do it, and then Mateo reached out for his aide, and she ignored him. She's like, no, you need to listen to the teacher, and he was reaching out to her for a reason. She ignored him, and he like fell down or something in his chair. Like, she moved away from him, and he fell down, and then he was punished.
Yeah.
And it just happens all the time.
It happens all the time. And his aide was a lovely person. She was
Right.
so nice. And she was doing that because she was required to through the IEP. And because he had many of our children have motor difficulties, so he couldn't politely tap her on the shoulder. He was a non-speaker, so he had movements that he couldn't control, but it was definitely his way of seeking help, and he was punished for it. And that was the moment when I looked around the room, and I was basically in tears, and I looked around the room and I realized everyone else was going about their business, is that we were trained to view behaviors in one way and not have much compassion or empathy for them. And that's when I decided that I was eventually going to write a book. And that was about 10 years ago, when when I saw how Mateo was viewed. I thought, this is happening all over the world probably, and it's just not okay.